Hi, welcome to Promo Insiders, an ASI media podcast that covers the issues that matter most to the promotional products industry. I'm Chris Ruvo for ASI, and today we'll be delving into one of the biggest acquisitions the industry has seen in years. One of the biggest ever, really. I'm talking about HPG's recently announced acquisition of Evans Manufacturing. HPG, of course, was Promo's ninth biggest supplier when the deal was announced January 9th. Evans ranked in the top 30. Here today to provide insights on what the deal means for the companies and the industry are HPG CEO Chris Anderson and Vice President of Marketing Ben Pawsey. Guys, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having us, Chris. It's a pleasure as always.
Yeah,
Awesome.
thanks,
So
Chris.
let's jump into this first question right away. Why did the Evans acquisition make sense for HPG, and what's the upside for the company and its customers?
Well, we first want to start with the customers because at the end of the day, all of our job security in this industry is reliant upon delighting end users. So the first thing that we look at in terms of evaluating any acquisition opportunity at HPG is why does this benefit the customer? And in the case of Evans Manufacturing, it was nearly a hand in glove fit. As cliched as that sounds, HPG, prior to the Evans acquisition, had 9 locations across North America, 1 in each time zone, 2 in Canada. But in terms of North American production of the goods themselves, we're primarily focused on decoration.
Mhm.
What Evans brings is the ability to produce tote bags out of whole cloth in their Nogales, Mexico facility,
Mhm.
or to produce via their in-house injection of blow molding water bottles and drinkware. So for HPG, it represented getting production closer to our end users. And in a timeline compressed world that we live in today,
Mhm.
anything we can do to cut out lead times and to reduce also our carbon imprint, because we're not putting water bottles and tote bags on steamships across the ocean. Instead, we're producing them on continent here in North America.
Yeah, bro, those are great points. And I think in that way, HPG is tying into not only larger industry trends, but really larger trends in manufacturing in general. People, North American markets are looking to produce closer to North America or in North America for reasons that you mentioned: speed to market, more predictability in the supply chain, and the sustainability factor, which I think we're all more conscious of nowadays. So it seems I could see why all those reasons would make a lot of sense there. One other question I did have kind of on this topic is you hear when companies come together, a lot of times there's marketing synergies or sales synergies that happen. Ben, maybe that's something you could speak to. Is there things you're anticipating that both Evans and HPG can benefit from a marketing sales standpoint?
Yes, always. I mean, no two companies succeed the same way. It's partly because of the products they have, but also, we have 8 or 9 companies now where they just all do it differently. And so it's always really rewarding to go in and see how the sales team and marketing team have been approaching going to market. And we know that we've got a suite of tools that no one else has. So with Storyboard Plus and Catalog Plus, those are 2 technologies where we can always fold in and add value to new acquisitions. Yeah, the knowledge share piece is always just the fun part of the acquisition. So we're really excited about what we've already seen with the sales and marketing team at Evans, and we know we can learn a lot as HPG.
All right, great. So you could take something from them, they could take something from you. Quickly, you don't have to go through all the ins and out, but just for those who may not be aware, top line view, Storyboard Plus, just can we tell folks about what that is and what it does?
Yeah, so you can upload a logo. It converts the logo within seconds and drops it onto 1,000+ products in a sort of Pinterest-like experience. So then you can kind of add your collection of products to a storyboard, and it is created instantly. You can brand it with your distributor logo and your client logo, and very quickly generate a ton of ideas for any project. So we'll
That's
see.
excellent. So that, and then in some ways you almost answered a part of what my next question was how does this acquisition benefit Evans as well? And I imagine having access to tools like that is certainly one of the things that Evans customers can look forward to. More broadly speaking, though, Chris, what are some of the advantages for Evans? What's Evans getting out of this deal?
Yeah, well, one way to look at this is that Evans becomes the latest state in the union that is HPG.
Hmm.
And in a union environment, generally you're providing air cover and ground support. And so what
Okay.
I mean by that is that in the case of Storyboard Plus or Catalog Plus, 2 of the tools that Ben's team commissioned within HPG, they would be, if not impossible, they would be at the very least burdensome for a small to mid-sized supplier to undertake that level of infrastructure spend and investment. So we're able to bring to bear tools and at the end of the day, business developing initiatives that frankly in Evans on its own couldn't provide to its customers, while at the same time allowing Evans to continue being Evans. That if you look at the rankings of the top suppliers, you can rank them by revenue, which those lists are widely circulated. But the less circulated, but oftentimes more important list are the list of the suppliers that distributors love to work with because they make it a frictionless experience. And Evans has become over time known as one of those suppliers. Now, a big part of why they've earned that reputation was Alan Vaught, the longtime CEO and ongoing president of Evans, obsession with being easy to do business with. What we're going to bring are additional tools and resources that will allow Evans to continue being Evans and to continue with that customer-centric focus, while at the same time availing them of tools and weapons in their arsenal that simply put would have been beyond their reach previously.
Okay. All right. In many ways, you answered my next question to a degree already, which is when these big deals have been announced, and we've had more and more of them in promo in recent years, where one larger company is buying another large company. There's worry. Does this mean that service levels are going to change? If I'm a distributor, am I going to have to do things differently now? Are there hoops that I'm going to have to jump through because now there's a new parent company of this company that I really loved working with? I think you've provided some reassurance already, but is there more you'd like to speak to on that, just to let distributors know that, how you're going to try to make this transition from two companies into one as seamless as possible?
Well, and it brings up an important distinction when it was the courting part of this process that I first met up with Alan several months ago in terms of discussing a potential union. And Alan had no shortage of options or suitors. But something that really resonated with him was the HPG Hippocratic approach to integration of acquired businesses, which is to say that first and foremost, we do no harm. Now, it's far easier for us to share that and then to back it up, given our track record that we have acquired over a half dozen companies just in the last few years. And in the process of doing so, have built a playbook by which we enabled the business to continue doing that which has made it successful. But then we identify some of the friction or impediments to growth and partner with the local leaders to address them. So a good example of this is that Evans Manufacturing today is producing water bottles in Garden Grove, California. It truly is novel, and they're one of the few molders left in North America who are focused exclusively on the promotional products industry. So here we have a freight and volume intensive category that's produced in the far southwest corner of the United States. Now, I don't have any news to share today in terms of what the future plans are, but I'll give you a hint, and that's that HPG has production sites across every time zone in North America and could readily co-locate equipment while not jeopardizing the Evans existing infrastructure. That's the type of synergy that we can bring to bear, while all the while Evans is continuing to provide the high levels of service that distributors have come to count on. The real key there is that we have additional resources that can be brought to bear as opposed to distracting the existing resources at Evans.
Gotcha. All right, very well said. Ben, as Chris is talking, I'm wondering, this puts you on the spot a little bit. I know the acquisition has just happened, but from a marketing standpoint, does having that narrative to share about North American production and what HPG can bring to augment without hurting, is that something that you look to focus on going to market? Is that something you look to put out there?
Absolutely. I mean, we have value propositions that we continually reinforce for each subsidiary, and then we have the HPG value proposition. And HPG's core value proposition is that we can give you access to everything, and it's a one-stop shop sort of value proposition. And so bolting in an Evans that has hundreds and hundreds of SKUs and expertise in core categories is a great story to tell at the HPG level. And then on the Evans level, again, we don't need to change what makes Evans Evans. But what we can do is offer more resources. So, my team, we've got 18 people on my team. We've got photographers, designers, copywriters, all that sort of stuff. Evans has 2 full-time people doing marketing. So immediately they can access a lot more creative energy and market intelligence and all those sorts of things. So so we can just help them tell their story more often or louder, and we're excited to do that.
Yeah, excellent. Good stuff. So let me change gears a little bit here, kind of pull the lens up or back off this immediate deal for a second and say, does HPG plan to stay aggressive on making acquisitions? Chris, it's no secret HPG's been very aggressive about acquisitions in recent years and has had success with those. Do you look to stay there, or do you think it settles for a time now? Where do you see things going?
Well, the answer is a bit of both. That
Okay.
we are very deliberate when it comes to our acquisitions. We have made it a point to not acquire sick businesses or companies, that
Mhm.
this is not a turnaround story. Instead, each business that we have acquired has been a successful enterprise in its own right prior to acquisition, and it plays an important role in our moving forward architecture. So everything that we do is characterized by first discipline back to that architecture in terms of the businesses within which we want to establish or extend our authority. And from there, it's a matter of opportunities.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is that I can't force an independent operator to sell their business, or nor can I influence the timing with which they do so. But when we have a pre-developed plan and we stay true to it, when those opportunities come to market, such as Evans, we're ready to pounce.
Mhm.
So the answer here is that we're going to be like the best bands over history. The very best bands have a tight but loose orientation,
Okay.
that they can improvise when it's time to improvise, but overall, it's in the service of the song. And in
Okay.
our case, the service that we all are focused on is creating a version of HPG that is more frictionless for our end users, that is better for our distributor partners to work with. And at the end of the day, that we bring true authority and differentiation to the categories in which we serve.
Got it. Chris, I got to tell you, as someone who makes a living partially through writing, I really would have wished that I would have thought of that music band analogy for this. I like that. That's really good. I might have to steal that from you.
Feel free. I'm
All
sure
right.
I appropriate it from somewhere else anyway. So
Okay.
turnabout is fair play, my friend.
All right, very good. So next question here is staying on the topic of M&A. There's been a lot of deals. There was a lot of deals to start the year in the industry. There was the activity on mergers and acquisitions within the industry broadly was pretty brisk, I think you could say, in 2022. Um, do you see that activity continuing? And do you think some of these large deals that we've seen, kind of a two-part question, some of these large deals we've seen between, a top 40 like yours and another top 40 will continue? Where do you see the M&A landscape going in the industry?
Well, we're certainly at an inflection point in terms of the macroeconomic environment.
Mhm.
That whether we're in a recession now or we're on the cusp of one remains to be seen, but it certainly has caused, if nothing else, a bit of a slowing up on the deal side generally.
Mhm.
But none of that is going to slow down the macro wave over the longer term in this industry. That
Mhm.
if you look at other consumer packaged goods type industries, the North American promotional products industry has been largely unconsolidated.
Right.
And so what seems to be a brisk wave for us is really just catching up with other industries that consolidated 20, 30 years ago.
Mhm.
So all that is to say that we may see a momentary slow up if there
Mhm.
is indeed a recession afoot,
Mhm.
but that the long-term trend is still going to be toward consolidation. Now, to answer your question more specifically about larger distributors and suppliers buying
Mhm.
increasingly larger distributors and suppliers,
Mhm.
it all comes down to the math. And in
Yeah.
the case of an acquisition, one of the realities is that I see dozens of companies every year that I would love to partner with,
Mhm.
but the cost, whether it be an explicit cost in terms of advisors, attorneys, accountants, etc., or the implicit cost, meaning the distraction factor that comes to play, or the opportunity cost of engaging there, oftentimes doesn't square with the size of the opportunity. And
Yeah.
the larger a distributor or supplier becomes, the higher the burden is in terms of satisfying those implicit and explicit costs, which is to say, the bigger you are, the larger the swings you need to make in terms of acquisition. So for HPG, some of our early acquisitions were appreciably smaller than the acquisition of Evans, which Evans was a top 40 supplier and had great momentum at the end of 2022, such that it likely, we of course haven't seen the 2022 rankings, but I think it's safe to say they would have moved up in the rankings. So this was a sizable business that we just acquired. And yet, in terms of that math that I referred to earlier, it was the type of acquisition that will swing the needle for an HPG. And it would suggest that future acquisitions by the likes of an HPG or an HPG equivalent on the distributor side are going to be of an Evans type nature. You're going to hire almost as many accountants and advisors to advise on a $5 million acquisition as you would a $50 million acquisition.
Mhm.
So suffice it to say, it makes sense to focus on the 50s rather than the 5s.
Okay, got it. If you want to move the needle as a larger company, you have to go larger in what you're looking to purchase. I get it. That makes a lot of sense. Ben, I'm just curious. I know it's not totally your wheelhouse, but what's your sense? And just talking with industry peers, other executives, do you have a similar view of Chris? Do you see it kind of proceeding that way in terms of M&A?
Yes, 100%. And just being at these events recently in January, it was very interesting how often people I was talking to were people trying to sell to HPG.
Okay.
And that wasn't something that we had to deal with, in years prior, after the Evans acquisition. It's kind of like, so who do I speak to about being acquired?
Is
So
that
definitely,
right? Or is that
yeah,
that's pretty wild? Like people
yeah.
are coming up to you on the show floor, or like at the or after the show, or what was going on?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just during the show, it's like, and I was like, well, I'm just the marketing guy, but I'll put in a good
Okay.
word for you.
All right, but that's a great anecdote there. I guess that shows the kind of environment that's out there right now. It's pretty interesting. So one other question here for you guys. Thank you so much for being generous with your time. And it's on the subject of private equity. Chris, you had mentioned our industry is basically fragmented. We're a fragmented industry. We have not consolidated. I think that's one of the things that has made our industry attractive to private equity. We've seen more private equity money come into the industry in recent years. HPG is private equity backed. Do you see more private equity money coming in, and do you see that contributing to an acceleration of deals within our industry? When I say deals, acquisitions and mergers.
I do. I do for a number of reasons. And then first and foremost is, as I alluded to earlier, and you just noted, that it is still a relatively fragmented industry. And where
Mm-hmm.
fragmentation exists, so too does the opportunity to consolidate.
Mm-hmm.
But private equity's continued incursion into our space is going to be reliant on all of us suppliers and distributors collectively showing a degree of recessionary resistance.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some businesses that really got hammered during the Great Recession. There
Mm-hmm.
were others who didn't participate. And so what you're going to see is an increasing divide between the haves and the have-nots
Mm-hmm.
in terms of investment and private equity focus to those businesses that have built up enough diversification and strategies by which they can continue to flourish and keep the lights on despite a macroeconomic slowdown. So that's going to characterize the next chapter of private equity activity in our industry, how we fare during this next potential recession, and over time, how robust we can prove our businesses are. And there are enough smart and sophisticated operators in both sides of our market, distributor and supplier alike, who have developed strategies to diversify their revenue bases, that my sense is they will continue to be very attractive targets for private equity investors.
And in a lot of ways that, just in talking to people who know a lot more about this than I do, they say that interest is a sign of a healthy industry. Is that fair to say? If there's interest from private equity, that is a sign of an industry that's going in the right direction. Is that a fair characterization? Is that too simple or?
No, I don't think it's too simple at all. And
Yeah.
I would give you the fairly blunt analogy in return that I haven't heard of many private equity deals in the buggy whip sector.
Right, sure.
Alternatively, promotional products, they have proven to be a category that is highly resilient in terms of the online transformation of marketing, that it is still a highly impactful moment when you get a tangible product with a company's logo on it, and that it in turn, say one of our hub pens, that a hub pen on average finds itself into 8 different sets of hands over the course of its lifetime of usage. What marketing method out there provides that type of tangible interaction in 2023? In a world that has increasingly become intangible, there's been a reversion back to those opportunities to make tangible impressions, which frankly I think gives us all reason for optimism, not only in terms of third-party dollars flowing into this sector, but our ability to continue to grow the industry to benefit end users and its constituent suppliers and distributors alike.
Well said. Last thing here, just final thoughts. We'll take it back to the Evans HPG deal. Excuse me. Ben, we'll start with you. Just any final takeaways you have for folks who might be listening?
Just that look forward to a better HPG and a brighter Evans. It's going to be an exciting 2023 for all, and we're looking forward to showing the industry what we can do.
Excellent. And Chris, how about you?
Well, I think the key takeaways is that it's business as usual at both sites. That our Garden Grove, California facility and Mexico facility in Nogales that are under the Evans banner. Every employee who was an Evans employee the day before the acquisition announced continues to be an employee today. Orders are still flowing into Evans and flowing out on their tight turnaround timelines. And any change that will occur will be additive in nature. We have plans, frankly, to expand our utilization of both facilities. And in terms of where we go from there, it's really a matter, as Ben has noted earlier, of availing the Evans team of some of the tools that HPG has to offer, and likewise taking some of the Evans capabilities that are uniquely Evans and allowing them to benefit the existing HPG customer relationships. So it won't be too long before tote bags that previously were imported from the Far East are instead brought in from Evans North American manufacturing facility, and that likewise drinkware, instead of sourcing it from a third-party overseas manufacturer, HPG is sourcing it internally from the Evans production site. So all of that gives us great reason for excitement around this deal today, but also the promise that it holds in terms of tightening lead times, reducing our reliance on overseas supplier partners, and in the end also doing something that I know Ben, frankly, is extremely passionate about, which is becoming a more sustainable supplier in the promotional products industry.
Okay. All right. Great place to leave it. Chris, Ben, thank you guys both so much for jumping on with me today. I know it's a very busy time of the year, and we do appreciate it. Great insights into this deal, and it sounds like customers of both Evans and HPG have a lot to look forward to going forward. So thanks so much, and best of luck with everything.
Thanks, Christopher.
Thanks, Chris.